So Ms. Femi says I should make my point in 10 minutes. And I'll try to do that. First of all, Your Royal Highness, friends, Ali. That's how we say hello. Ali? Ali. Thank you. So in 10 minutes, I'm going to do 3 things. Give you a history of Palau, tell you what we're doing to combat climate change, and issue a challenge. So when we became a nation, we got the flag. We had a flag. So this is the moon. If you go out and look at the moon, you see the 2 people over there, where those are Palauans, according to our legend anyway. Palau is a small nation. We have a very short but I think interesting history. We were discovered by the discoverers in the 16th and 17th century. And when there was a dispute as to who owns the islands, whether it was Portuguese or Spanish, the Pope decided to give us to Spain. And when Spain lost the Spanish-American War, they sold us to Germany. When Germany lost the First World War, they gave us to Japan. When Japan lost the Second World War, they gave us to the United States. We finally became independent in 1994. We were the last trust territory. Thank you very much. We were the last trust territory under the trusteeship program of the United Nations. So when we became independent, they closed that, and we only use that chamber now for meetings. Hallelujah. So we came through all this turmoil, and we became independent, and now we are facing another man-made disaster of catastrophic proportions, climate change. So I'm here to try to connect the dot of climate change to food security to sustainable development in Palau, the beautiful islands. So last year, 70th birthday of the United Nations, we've already heard the 4 framework that we had. The Sendai in the framework on disaster risk management in Sendai in March, and the Addis Ababa action on financing of development in July in Ethiopia, and then the Sustainable Development Goals that we adopted in New York in September, and then the Climate Change Paris Agreement. 4 huge framework for development, each in each of the 4 seasons, in 4 cities, 4 continents. Exciting. This is Palau. We're looking at some of the important infrastructure. So this slide is just to show you how much we need partnership. And this, we had our bridge collapsed in 1992, and the new bridge was built by our partners, Japan. Those people you see in that island have written the word "is the end" with a question mark. It is a question regarding climate change. So you look at the destruction that the climate change has done to the Pacific Islands. Within this past year, we had 3 huge typhoons. One, of course, it's a famous one, the high end at the Philippines. After that, of course, we're south of the Philippines, so every time it goes to the Philippines, it hits us first and then hits the Philippines later. But you only hear about the Philippines because they're bigger, and Palau is a Micronesian island, small island. You don't hear, only 2 or 3 people die. So anyway, we have more frequent storms, more intense storms, sea level rise. The sea level rise affects our crops because our taro patches are along the sea coast. We are sea people, so our communities are built around the sea. And so we have issues with our crops. We have issues with the water lens because it becomes salinated by the rising water. And of course, you heard about the acidification, which affects our reefs. We've gone over these 17 goals over and over and over again. You know them. I prefer the cake one that we saw this morning. So this morning, the Prime Minister, His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Samoa, made reference to the Healthy Islands Declaration. This is the declaration that the Ministers of Healthy Pacific got together and declared in 1995 as their vision for the new millennium. We are now in 2016, but this was their vision in 1995 about what the healthy islands would be. I'm putting in here because some of this, if you look at it, it has to do with the sustainable development. The children are nurtured in body and mind. Environment invites learning and leisure. People work and age with dignity. Ecological balance is a source of pride, and the ocean that protects us is sustained. So 3 things have to do with environment and the ocean, and 2 that have to do with people. First, beginning with the children, nurturing, and then people working and aging. So it's all that you have in the sustainable development. We got them in 5, we now have them in 17. So what is Palau doing with regards to fighting the climate change? So in 1956, you cannot see it, it's way up on the top. These are called 70 islands. Palau declared these 70 islands the biodiversity sanctuary. So no one could go to these islands. This is from 1956. No one can go to these islands because it was where the fishes were spawning. In 1976, they found another area where the fish is spawning, so they declared that a no-take zone. In 2001, we declared the first shark sanctuary in the world to protect the sharks. In 2005, our president issued the Micronesian challenge, which was to protect 30% of our coastal marine zones and 20% of our terrestrial areas. He issued this challenge to the people around him in Guam, Micronesia, Marshall Islands, and the Commonwealth of Mariana Islands. This Micronesian challenge has now become the model for the Caribbean challenge, the model for the Coral Triangle in Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and Solomon Islands. Then in 2003, our legislatures, the Congress, passed a protected Marine Protection Act, Marine Area Protection Act. And this was to finance our marine protection. So our 16 states each have their own marine protected area, and they get their money to take care of that through this. We collect $30 from every tourist, every traveler that comes to Palau and they depart. We collect $30 specifically for the marine protection, for the environment protection. We put them into a fund, and each of our 16 states develop their plans for marine protected areas and get their money from there. Then the big ones was in last year, 2015, our Congress declared our total exclusive economic zone, 80% of it is a marine sanctuary. No more commercial fishing, no more taking. That's a huge one. And this is our contribution. Thank you. This is our contribution for implementation of goal number 14, which is healthy ocean. We want to walk the talk, and we want to provide a model for all nations to follow, to do their own protected areas. Those are the objectives. But the major objective, as stated in our law, is that we want to be able to pass a healthy ocean to our children. The effort in food. We heard about what the Prime Minister talked about, the food problems that we have. All the issues that he talked about this morning are issues in Palau. The dumping of non-nutritional food, the lack of nutritious food, the lack of education. In the area of food, and one of the most important things is that our mothers no longer breastfeed their babies with breast milk. The reason being that they have become educated to what is good for them. And because they have to work, and because they have to participate in all kinds of activities, they no longer have time for their babies. And so economically, time-wise, it's better to bottle feed their babies. This is an education that we've gotten from our Western education system. So we're trying to go back to breastfeeding. And last year was another big year for us. We passed this law, RPPL 957, and it will levy 10% of the taxes on tobacco and tax on alcohol, and those 10% will go into combating non-communicable disease. And the reason why that is because we, like the Prime Minister of Samoa said this morning, are spending up to 70% of our Ministry of Health budget on dealing with treatment of non-communicable disease. So here's the challenge. A study was made by my colleagues in the International Breastfeeding Network. We studied 6 nations in Australia, China, India, Philippines, Malaysia, and South Korea. And in those 6 nations, we found out that the amount of infant formula that is produced and sold to them is equal to 2.87 million tons of carbon dioxide produced. So that's equivalent to 888 million miles driven by an average passenger car, or 1.3 million tons of waste sent to the landfill. It's equivalent to an annual carbon dioxide emissions from 325 million gallons of gasoline, 3,107 million pounds of coal burned, or equivalent to carbon sequestered by 74.1 tree seedlings that are grown for 10 years, or 2.37 million acres of land, forest land in the United States for 1 year. So here's the challenge. Would you exchange the breast milk, which is free and best for the baby, for these? No. Thank you.